My name is Tobias Newa, and I'm from the Ministry of Urban Rural Development. And we are responsible for town planning, for overseeing town planning the whole country. And that includes formalization and upgrading of informal settlements.
Yeah, my name is Thomas Hennett. I'm the project team leader of the GIZ ISUT project. So we're basically the co-organizer of this event together with the Ministry of Urban and Rural Development.
My name is Helena Silvanus. I work for the city of Windhoek. I'm a town planner by profession. And at the city of Windhoek, my role is to plan the upgrading of informal settlements and improving the living condition of people in the informal settlements through planning.
Winfried Holze, architect, urban designer, sculptor. I do architecture, town planning a little bit, but passion lies in urban design mixed with architecture.
My name is Sarah Nakalila, and I'm a professional officer focusing on urban systems at ICLI Africa.
My name is Jacques Corabel. I'm a senior lecturer at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. I'm part of the Department of Architecture, Planning and Construction, and my specialty is urban and regional planning.
My name is Joseph Fernando. I'm from the location, the informal settlement called Pitanayamba location. That is the informal settlement that at the northern part of city of Windhoek.
My name is Tega Shivute, and I work at the Namibia Nature Foundation, NNF. And I coordinate a project, what they call the National Adaptation Planning Project. It's funded by the Green Climate Fund.
My name is Nathaniel Aresep, Nate for short. I'm the CEO of the Namibian Association of Local Authority Officials.
My name's Tienes Yenes. I am working for the city of Windhoek, a municipality, local authority within the Commerce region, and as the acting manager for housing and land delivery, responsible for the execution of housing and land delivery projects.
My name is Sheena Bruce. I'm an urban specialist with the World Bank, and we are supporting the government of Namibia through MERD and the National Housing Enterprise with technical assistance.
My name is Philip Lul. I'm an architect from Namibia originally. Have worked many years at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. But currently I'm living in Mexico City, where I relocated 2 years ago with my family. I'm here because I continue to work together with the GIZ, supporting the Ministry of Urban and Rural Development in the implementation of the national housing policy.
What drew me to the urban dialogue was, I think, the theme, building just city, and what that means, especially considering that I'm responsible for planning within the informal settlements, and mostly those are the people where their voices are the least heard. So how do we then incorporate them in ensuring that spatial justice is also achieved towards them?
I think Namibia is looking for, as this event also tries to support, is looking for a new future for its urban areas. I think the important aspect is that Namibian solutions are needed. I think the key words here that hopefully many in this event will echo is integrated planning. The town planners are facilitators who bring together different disciplines and sectors. Integrated planning is about context, not blueprint solutions, but every town, every neighborhood will be different, needs different solutions, different approaches. It's about being informed, data-based, having a good information basis, appreciating it, using it for planning.
That's the only way we can change the settings of the planning in the country, by involving all the people by all means possible. That's very, very important.
Namibian sort of towns and cities right now the space of the street is really mainly used for transit, mostly by car, much less by pedestrians. In the high-income neighborhoods, often you will see sidewalks covered in rocks so that people actually are prevented from walking there. So it's actually, there's a lot of sort of anti-urban character in our more formal areas.
The most obvious one, first of all, is the inequality in the urban spaces, partially as a heritage of apartheid. But we see today, still in Namibia, we plan and we live alongside income levels, basically, and most visible in informal settlements. Yeah. So I think to overcome this segregation is one very important aspect. The access to opportunities must be more equal in the cities, but not just between rich and poor, I would say, but also across different generations.
When you look at our national climate documents, the NDC, there's hardly any mention of urban settlements in them. And we hope that throughout this process that we'll be able to incorporate aspects of resilience, climate resilience, especially with regards to informal settlements. We hope that those would really be incorporated in our process.
There will be no structure. Because ultimately what you have with towns, you imagine this framework within which something must grow, but you have no policy interventions to guide it to grow. Or the interventions that you have is based or copied from somewhere else that is not conducive to where you need to go and how your society is growing. And that is what we are finding at the moment. Windhoek is currently 40% informal and 60% formal. And that is not a good scenario for a city.
We're talking about around green cities, is that looking at some of the cities' budgets, like the one with the city of Windhoek, 70% of that budget goes to operational costs. And then very little of it actually goes into all these other elements that, the city faces.
One of our biggest problems at the moment is the fact that it's monofunctional. All of our cities, all of our urban settlements have very clear defined land use areas that has only one land use. We have high, middle, low income residential areas, a central business district, some industrial, some recreational areas.
What we do today will determine where we will be in the future. And I think to continue to sprawl, as cities, to continue to sprawl, I think it's not the right direction to go.
We have a massive youth unemployment in the country. Informal settlements are home to the majority of children, you could say, and they grow up in very insecure circumstances that make for their life. Yeah? So to plan for that future generation, I think, is an important aspect of overcoming inequality.
If it's regards to access to water and sanitation, whether it's heat stress, whether it's vulnerability to flooding, it's people in informal settlements who are mostly impacted by that.
We have to make sure that all the informal settlements is alleviated in the country. So, and that's the challenge that we are faced with, and we really have to work together with all the key stakeholders to make sure that the issue of informal settlements is addressed in the country. Because people on the ground knows what they need, yeah? And they know the challenges that they are going through, and they know what they want.
I think if we really want to change neighborhoods and cities and make it more viable and feasible and create opportunities for people, we need to make people part of the planning decisions.
If as policymakers and implementers can really just listen to the communities and experts from not just one sector, not just engineers, but people who are working in social areas, environmentalists, if there can be a more integrated way of discussing, even hearing the community voices, that would be an excellent way to move forward to make those changes. Yeah.
It's very, very important that people are involved in all the projects from the beginning up to the end.
The discussion is, how do we get our informal settlements to the level of our formal suburbs. And I think that's the wrong, the wrong aim, because I don't think our formal suburbs are neither safe, nor sustainable, nor green, or any of those, right? So I think they also have to change. And so while we are, of course, focused on on improving living conditions in informal settlements as the most urgent sort of need, there is a good understanding of all the deprivations that exist in informal settlements. In terms of healthcare, education, basic services, and so on. And there are, I think, answers to those. I'm not saying they always get implemented, but I think we have relatively clear ideas what needs to be done in terms of infrastructure, what needs to be done in terms of institutions that support communities to have better education.
We're having a situation where we have so many stakeholders and we have so much capacity in ourselves to get things done. There are many ways that we can sort of change.
The biggest problem we have currently is we're still stuck in the old planning thoughts. We need to go to a system where we have a urban development where the human being and the pedestrian is key.
You need political will. You need, from a higher level, you need the buy-in, because everything with policy is centered around political will. So if politicians are lawmakers, if they don't understand what needs to change on a policy level to ensure that Namibia grows in a sustainable way, then you will have cities, towns that will grow in a very informal way.
As much as we're talking about change, people are actually very adamant to change, especially in the government institutions, especially if you're looking at things from a top-down perspective. And unfortunately, that sort of hierarchy does affect the changes or ways that you want to perform on a grassroots level.
So I think sustainability means densification, especially closer to where the infrastructures already exist. And also then it means that we should create integrated neighborhoods where we limit the need to travel so far, where we limit the need on dependency on cars. So in that way, you also address carbon emission and all these other things. For me also, sustainability means everybody within the city needs to have access.
The current scenario leads to urban sprawl because we have these uniform land uses in residential areas. So we have a whole residential area with 1,000 square meter properties. Personally, I would like to see an urban development where there's much more opportunities generated for people. And to reach that, we need to densify. We need to integrate land uses. The 15-minute city, the walkability, the new urbanism, I think that should become part and parcel of our planning documents.
For me, I think a future Windhoek would be a city where people have access to either amenities, to land, to everything, but more in a dense and compact environment rather than sprawling.
We have public space. We say public space is it's a broad word, but like, for example, parks, they're not safe. Even during the day, if you go to a park here, you don't really feel safe. I've seen, though, that it's different depending on the neighborhoods. In some neighborhoods where there's a lot more commotion and movement, you feel a little bit like, there's eyes on you, so it's safer. But just really seeing the value in these spaces, they add so much to the livelihoods of the people that live in this community.
There is also that element of livable neighborhoods, livable cities. Yeah, so that's why you hear at this event the green city, for example, or the safe city, of course, as a critical element of informal settlements. So these are aspects there where you need to balance the collective need, with the individual interest for adequate house, land title, and so on.
The kind of city that would really add to the quality of life, not just work and being serious, but also where people can have fun, but the way they can also use their creativity, their innovation to develop a livelihood. So integration of residential livelihood, of having fun and just improving quality of life. That is the kind of city where people can just live life in a more holistic way than just a functional way.
Currently, the way that our planning framework is building a segregated city. Because of the way that Windhoek was developed, I actually call it's one city with two cities in it. The one side of Windhoek looks like this, the other side of Windhoek looks like this. Yes, you've got different income levels, but you need to find a balance where you marry these two. So you need to find a central point where these two can come together so that you break the disparity between poor and rich. And if we don't do that, and we keep the modus operandi as is, one side will grow informal and it will outgrow the formal, because the formal is kept intact, but the informal is not kept intact.
If you don't own a car, that 80% of Namibians don't own cars. But our cities are designed for the motor vehicle. You can't get from your house to your school to your work if you don't fit into some kind of a transport system.
I think in terms of the current urban settings, one of the key things is that how we can make urban settings more inclusive, more sustainable, how we can get involved, not only just develop urban areas that are functional in terms of just housing and structures, but urban spaces that are really useful for people to live, to improve their quality of life, where kids can play, families can go on outings, and that can really just be enjoyable.
We must move away from the element of building concrete jungles. If I say concrete jungles, meaning focus just on buildings. We need to move towards where we build communities, as I said. There is an economy that is thriving within informal settlements. But you're not formalizing it, you're not giving people the opportunity, and that's why the income level is not improving. Because once you start formalizing it, you start giving them access to other opportunities of grants that they can get as SMEs to operate and run their businesses. And they become entrepreneurial, they appoint more people, the customer base increases.
The only way our country will move forward if we do wealth creation. If the people have money, to make more money to survive. At this stage, it is more of a struggle because it is through regulation almost.
The higher the density, the more people there is to generate economic opportunities and to pay for public facilities and schools and clinics. We will move away from over-regulating land uses and activities to a more free-form opportunity generation where people take their lives in their own hands and make it work in the urban environment.
And how do we then support the sort of thriving and emergence of local economies in these neighborhoods so that they don't just remain residential sort of suburbs for sort of low-wage labor elsewhere, right? So
what is currently the thing which everybody wants is a house on a plot. Our minimum property size is 300 square meters. Now what you get there is the house is being put in the middle of a property and there's a lot of space left around it. But the problem with this is that it is single residential. In other words, you may not do anything else other than stay there.
The aspect that doesn't get exposed as much is really to think through what is the economic base that is going to underpin an informal settlement community today, but also into the future, right? So if we think about the way that our urban planning sort of paradigm is set up is really still in the modernist idea of having, residential areas for people who have an income and a job elsewhere, with the income of which they can pay for their housing and they can pay for everything else, right? So the idea of a formal economy. And that is, of course, not true for the majority of our residents. And
there's a Town Planning Act which regulates planning in the country. Now we looking at how can we address these issues, or how can we address these gray areas for the act to be, or for the law to be able to address the lived reality of our people on the ground. So that's one. Secondly, we need to change the mindset of our officials.
We do quite a lot of work in terms of professional networking and development, but we also do policy advocacy. And because urbanization has been a key driving factor over the last few years in Namibia, which was also confirmed by the recent census, a lot of our work recently has been on how we can be better prepared as a nation for the urbanization challenge. So,
if you want to look to the future, you have to imagine what the future should be like. So we really need to look at our policy interventions. We still have policies that are quite old, that comes even before Namibia became independent. And those policies is driving the planning of Windhoek. And everything is built on planning. So we really need to look at changing policies that speaks to the future of a city and benchmark it against other cities to see what they have done to create cities that are thriving, that are livable, where you have a city where you live, work, and play, and building sustainable communities and inclusive communities.
What is also urgent is that we spoke a lot about policy that is, that people say that we need a policy for this and that. We have a policy for housing that has been approved. It is very detailed. It is very, it has implementation plans with a lot of detail, with a lot of actions that need to be taken. And we must just do it, right? And we must do that and implement it in order to create a sort of continuous system of improving urban conditions and improving living conditions. It allows incremental development. In fact, it encourages it. But it also provides a mechanism how it should be funded.
I think maybe on a policy level, we actually do see a change when it comes to trying to overcome the inequality. We see significant financial commitments of the government when it comes to formalizing informal settlements, housing programs, and so on. I think a very, very important aspect is how to successfully spend that money. And I think one very promising tool or instrument that we see is that we have the 2023 adopted national housing policy for Namibia, which amongst others foresees a review of the subsidy framework in the urban sector in Namibia. So basically how you transfer financial support, how you create subsidies in a way that the disadvantaged households actually benefit.
So how much does it cost to implement, or what are the costs in action? If we don't do anything, what is it going to cost us? And if we do something, what is it going to cost us?
Worldwide, town planning is moving away from that modern way of thinking that led to urban sprawl and car-dominated layouts, to a mixed and an integrated, walkable, human-scale urban development.
I think the urban dialogue is a step closer to what we want. I think bringing different towns together also helps us deal with the challenge, because instead of just focusing on Windhoek, having perspectives from other towns and also sharing the capacity will help us build a better Namibia. So I think urban dialogue is something necessary and maybe need to be done more often to build the Namibia we want.
Also events like the Urban Dialogue that are, completely horizontal, where you can speak, have a vendor and a CEO and a sort of urban professional sit at a table and just talk about their experiences in a very horizontal fashion. I think is really critical.
I find it quite intriguing because we're not focusing on just one subject. We're really trying to dig deep into different aspects of what makes an urban space and who are the actors that are involved. And we're also giving a platform for those actors that live this experience.
This dialogue tries to touch on so many issues, and yet we intentionally exclude topics, which is why we're hoping to have a dialogue next year which will dive into urban economics.
But I also was impressed by the resilience of the voices that came out, that people in the beginning struggled but somehow found a way to make a living for themselves and their families, find a space that they can call home, sometimes makeshift corrugated iron but still good quality that they can place that they can call home. So I think it was very inspiring and encouraging to listen to the voices from the community.
Sometimes you lose track with the community. And I think part of that community participation in decision making should be more focused on getting a newspaper, a blog, a website where we can share more of these experiences, that people realize what real life is within our urban settlements.
So my idea is we need to create wealth. And the only way we create wealth is if you do it on your own property, on your own, which belongs to you, which you can get old in, which then becomes an asset. And even if you die, your parents or your children are still earning. And it's just carrying on.
There's a responsibility for everyone to act, knowing that any delay that, in my field of work I am creating has a real impact on, somebody's, child dying in a shack fire, somebody else getting raped at a water point. These are real things that happen all the time.
It's a bit challenging, but of course we are moving towards that. You can already see we have started because we want to have cities that are sustainable and resilient.